everyone. My name is Megha Rao, and I'm a poet and a visual artist. And I'm really excited for you to read my book, Teething, published by HarperCollins. This book is a collection of poems, but at the same time, it tells a story. A story about three children growing up in Kerala, all their experiences, and the underlying theme is innocence, and I really think you will love it. Today, I'm going to be performing one of the poems from my book, Teething, and also from the Teething EP, an extended play that I released a few weeks before the book came out. So here goes The Woman. You met me on a Monday by accident, just as the men were throwing me out after a bar fight. You were passing by, and I was reeking cheap brandy. I think I saw your jaw drop. When you asked them who I was, they told you my name could cut through tongues, leave them hanging from mouths like guillotine blades. No, I won't lie to you. I was dangerous because I already knew that I was beautiful. When men on the street ask me why I don't smile, I tell them they might never survive it. I am laughter so powerful. I can bring cities to their knees. Hafiz and Rumi first discovered poetry when they pressed their index fingers to my cheeks and stumbled upon dimples. I am dangerous because I already know that I am brave. And I am dangerous because when I leave, I will make you write poetry. So tell them how you still smell burning frangipani sifting through your fingers when you think about me sighing spring fever into your neck, how you cycled through the ceiling lit with golden lights when you traced my spine, how it felt like skinny dipping in the Ganges when you kissed my tears. I was the bleeding sunset in handcrafted shoes. I was the Himalayas sitting cross-legged on your couch wearing ancient runes on my tattooed arms. I was the realest damn thing. Now you don't meet anyone on Mondays by accident. You like ordinary Tuesdays and karak chai and girls who laugh like temple bells. Now you turn me into a national band. Now you build borders because this is how you heal from my love. This is how you recover. But you don't tell them about the recurring nightmares, the 3 a.m. scares, when you wake up in a sweat screaming a name that cuts your tongue so bad you feel like the French Revolution. And in your dreams, you see a woman dancing to death metal on the roof of an ambulance like she was afraid of nothing. And when she looks straight at you and she smiles, you pick up your heart like an emergency and you run. Thank you.
Good morning and welcome back to Studio 2. We now begin Old, No Vintage, a masterclass with Dr. Vardhaman Jain. A chartered accountant with a doctorate in commerce, Dr. Jain has been a paper writer and speaker at several of lecture meetings, seminars, and conferences on variety of professional subjects, individual development, and Swami Vivekananda. He is an author of four books, including the recently launched book, A Closer Look in the Mirror, and the acclaimed Adding Salt to Make It Sweeter. I request Dr. Jain to start the masterclass.
Good morning, everybody. We are the ninth edition of the Pune International Literature Festival with the social theme Power of the Golden Years. I must thank Manjiri Prabhu for this amazing initiative where I've been associated for the past several years. It's always been a delight to be here. This year, with the theme Power of the Golden Years, I'm here to address you on the subject Old, No, Vintage. Before I get on to the subject, let me give a brief background. I marched into the 60s a couple of months ago. Mind you, I did not turn 60. I marched into 60s. I've been party to running an old age home. No, I wouldn't call it an old age home, a home for senior citizens for the past 26 plus years. And I've been closely associated with the elderly and have observed them, and so many of them, very, very closely. Have had parents who lived up to the age of 97 and 94, with whom I had an enviable bonding until their last breath. My profession has allowed me, and I'm a chartered accountant in practice. My profession has allowed me to interact with seniors right from my early years of professional practice, when I interacted with some of them who were twice my age. And when I say twice my age, it's not an exaggeration. I recall an incident when a senior gentleman who happened to be my client, I met at a wedding reception when he was there along with his wife. So naturally, so when he introduced me to his wife, he said, "Here is Mr. Jain." His wife, who would have known that her husband travels to Mr. Jain's office, asked me a question. "How's your father doing?" I said, "Father?" I wouldn't know how she knows my father. I said, "Yes, he keeps talking about you. He keeps coming to your father for consultation." I said, "No, that's me. It's not my father." So she was amazed with the age difference between her husband and myself. And therefore, I say, I have had people twice my age, interacted them with closely on matters of professional concern. And now that I've marched into 60s, I have peers, colleagues, and a lot of friends from this golden era. Having said thus and set the background for my talk on the subject, let me come down straight to the point. Somebody said, old age is when you retire. Retire from what? You ask a professional, you ask a businessman, you ask an industrialist, or for that matter, you can ask a politician. Retire from what? There is nothing like retirement. In fact, when I was 22 years old, just married, yes, I was married at the age of 22, and had started my practice, I happened to tell my wife that, well, I have started off practice, but I propose to retire at the age of 45. I shall give up active practice then. She thought it was one of those moments of youthful vigor and enthusiasm when you say that you will retire at 45. Life moved on. When I touched 40, I said, yeah, 5 years to go and I shall retire. She looked at me but did not utter a word. Then 2, 3, 4 years passed, and I said, oh, this is the 45th year. Now, like I told you, I must retire the next year. And guess what? She said, retirement? Is this the age to retire? You continue for at least a period of 5 years. More. I said, okay, 5 years, but then nothing more. And soon it was 50. When I came to 50 and I posed the question again to her that I need to retire, she said, 50 is the age to begin. Your practice has just set. You have to bloom as a true professional now. I did heed to her advice. I had no choice. But looking back at the decade gone by, I can tell you with all conviction at my command that this is phenomenally true. Like life began at 50, the profession began at 50. You did wonders post 50. I can see that from the decade that's gone by. Now look at Japan. Japan has not an equivalent word for the word retire in English. They don't have an equivalent word, it is said. It is no wonder that Okinawa in Japan sees a huge number, a record number of citizens living beyond the age of 100. Obviously, you would want to know the secrets of living beyond 100. For that, you need to take a flight to Japan, or you may browse through the book Ikigai by Hector Garcia, where she talks about the secrets of the longevity. What is aging? Is aging about the advent of aches, pains, immobility, dependence? Normally, that is how we picturize aged, old people. Is aging when you have questions like, why am I continuing? ये भगवान मुझे उठा क्यों नहीं ले जाता? Why does not God take me away? These are the type of questions you are. Is that the time when you are aging? Is it aging when you have statements like, I don't think I can do it? No, not me. Or, oh, not at this age. Not possible. Is that the time when you say you are aging? Maybe the ad world has instilled a fear of aging. Maybe the fear of death, the agony of dying, the obsession to look younger, the masking of the appearance with whatever arrangements can be done. Or is it all for the covering of the emptiness inside which can come about for a person aging and getting into this golden era? Let me tell you, aging is mandatory. Yes, you will age. You are 50, you'll be 55, you'll be 60, you'll be 65. That is mandatory. But growing old is optional. So well said. Growing old is optional. You need not have to grow old. You may age. Yes, I marched into 60s. But I'm not 60 years old. Not at all. So if you have to look at anti-aging, if at all, supposing somebody were to say that, well, I need to look at anti-aging. Growing, you will age. If you have to talk of anti-aging, which means you're attempting to say that I need to die young. How is that possible that you die young? That's not a good option. That's not a choice either. So anti-aging in terms of growing in number of years is a phenomenon which is a fait accompli. But growing old is a choice. You can decide whether you remain ever young or you grow old as you age. The average life expectancy in India is about 70 years. And the people above 65 years is about 5.3%. That with the current population would be about 6 crore individuals who are in the category of 65 years and above. One needs to look around to find out how many of them are aging, which is the numbers that we see, and how many of them are growing old. If there is a category of growing old and just aging, you have to look at the category of just aging, and then you would know what is the position when we talk of vintage, not growing old. Well, I'm not talking of anti-aging secrets in terms of physical looks. When I talk of the oldies, no, I don't talk of the oldies. Do I talk of the aged? No, I don't talk of the aged in that sense. I don't talk of the elders, no senior citizens. I am talking of vintage. That's the subject, vintage. Now, we are from the time, when I say vintage, we are from the time something of quality was produced. We represent that era. We represent the best of our kind. If that's the kind of approach, then you are not growing old. You are vintage. Eleanor Roosevelt very beautifully said that beautiful young people are accidents of nature. Beautiful young people are accidents of nature. But beautiful old people are works of art. Yes, if you see works of art among the people, among the aged, that is what we are referring to when we say vintage. It's rightly said, you are not old. You have been young for a very long time. I was young when I was 17. I was young when I was 27. I was young when I was 50. I am young when I am 60 and 60 plus. Age is just a number, they say. So somebody beautifully coined the term that you are a teenager, a senior teenager, maybe. You are not a teenager, okay, in terms of numbers, yes, but you are not old either. You are a teenager. You are a senior teenager. Because you are only as young as you feel. You can look old at 18 and you can look young at 90. Just the other day, a young girl who had a gentleman in front of her called out, "Uncle." And this gentleman turned his head behind and to check up whom she was addressing when she was actually calling out to him. Now, that's the kind of approach that, no, well, number, not an uncle, not an oldie in that sense, not at all. A Harvard study of adult development refers to subjective health, how healthy you feel. Your objective health could be in terms of what illnesses you have. But the subjective health is what we are talking about, how healthy you feel. And they've said that it is lifestyle factors which determine happiness, not wealth, not fame, not success. Other lifestyle factors that determine the happiness. So do not regret going old. It is a privilege desired very few. Maybe many want to grow old, desire, but not that you go old. It's a privilege to be actually getting old. And for that matter, you're not getting old, you're getting better. How? More mature, wiser, a broader outlook. You've seen more number of years, obviously, gained experience. So it's totally different. You may say that my face seemed to have wrinkles, but my heart has none. I am still 16 at 60. Do you remember the song by Manna Day from the 1965 film Waqt? The famous lyrics of Sahir Ludhianvi, the great Hindi poet, said it all. He said, Balraj Sahni says in that song, "Ay meri Zohra Zabi, tujhe मालूम नहीं कि अभी तक मैं हूं जवां और तू हंसी." So even Balraj Sahni at that age, definitely beyond 60s, talked of what is vintage, not getting old, but being vintage. And you are Balraj Sahni, no less. You cannot help getting older, but you do not have to get old. Age will, but not necessarily that you grow old. Actually, old age is when you give up. Until then, you are spectacular. You are fabulous. The day you give up, everything goes over. I have a relative of mine who is just about 70, great in health, but not great in attitude. So he would talk of all the pains and aches that he has. He's grown older. Though he may have aged to 70, but he's grown older beyond 70 by the approach, the attitude that he has. Contrast to this, I have a father-in-law. I had a father-in-law who at 6 feet and 100 kgs plus, learned swimming at the age of 60. I have a doctor family friend who started painting watercolors at the age of 80. I have my mother-in-law who started mandala painting at the age of 80. Now, for them, age was just a number. 80, 70, 60 or 90 was just a number. For taking up anything new, attempting anything new, they were out there as youthful as a teenager. So it's not about age, it is about energy. Age need not always dictate what you can or cannot do. So important. It cannot dictate. At age 60, of course, subject to physical ailments that you may possess, age otherwise would only be a number. It does not dictate. It does not decide the energy you will have to look at doing things, to accomplishing things. We have a Nobel laureate at age 90. We have a North Polar at 89. We have a pilot's license acquirer at 87. We have a painting artist as late as the late 70s. We have a marathoner at 92. We have a grandmother and a granddaughter finishing college at the same time. We have a maths teacher who at 100 is teaching in a school where she was a student of mathematics. Inspiration, isn't it? Absolutely wow. This just proves that life's biggest accomplishments are not reserved for the young. It's not that those who are in the teenage or those who are in their youth would have the best of accomplishments. This can come in at any age, and we just saw a list of them. In fact, I am reminded of Henry Longfellow. Very beautifully wrote these lines. For age is opportunity no less. than youth itself, though in another dress. And as the evening twilight fades away, the sky is filled with stars invisible by day. I think commendable words from Henry Longfellow. And now that we are at a literature festival, some remarkable accomplishments from this world of literature. Noah Webster completed the American Dictionary of English Language at the age of 66. Somerset Maugham wrote Points of View at the age 84. Tolkien published the first volume of Lord of Rings at 62. P.G. Wodehouse worked on his 97th novel and was knighted then. That time he was 93. Peter Mark Rogers compiled the Thesaurus at 73 and oversaw its updations right until the age of 90. Isn't it phenomenal that everything happened beyond 60s and right into the 90s? And this in the world of literature, when you meet enough people around who say, no, I'm 70s, I can't read much, I don't read, I can't write. And here you have a long list of people who had accomplishments in the field of literature, writing at that age, which is said to be the golden era, which is vintage. Does this not fill you with a sense of wonderment? This is vintage material. It is vintage when you say that your shopping list has only fast relief items. When you have fast relief items in your shopping list, you are vintage material. Or your attitude is what Saint Kabir Das said. Chaha miti, chinta miti, manwa beparwa. जिसको कुछ नहीं चाहिए वही शहंशाह. And if not at an early age, at the age when you are 60s and above, your desires are met, your chintais are out virtually. Forget the physical ailments that some of us may live with. But there too, chinta is a state of mind. So chaha miti, chinta miti, manwa beparwa, not worried about the world. जिसको कुछ नहीं चाहिए वही सच्चा शहंशाह. I think the years, the vintage years, are the years where you really need nothing. And then you are the Shahanshah that Kabir Das talked of. You could echo what Einstein said, that I have reached an age where if somebody tells me to wear socks, I don't have to. Beparwa. I don't have to wear the socks that somebody did tell me. So said famously Mr. Einstein. And if I have to use a cliche term from the Bollywood, when it talks of vintage material, it says, Buddha hoga tera baap. Not a very great statement to make, but then it echoes the sentiments of vintage material, of vintage, not growing old, not old people. There would be enough issues that you have as you age, but that's part of being vintage. Like I had this gentleman friend of ours, a senior man, whom I happened to be there that evening. And as we got talking, he says, oh, I had been to a wonderful place in Koregaon Park for dinner. So I said, oh, tell me the name of the restaurant you were in. So he scratched his head, wouldn't be able to recall the name. So he started asking me, what do you call that flower that you give when you love somebody to express love? Red. Yeah, red in color. Oh, that's a rose, I said. No, rose, yes, but what do you call it in Hindi? So I said, gulab. He said, yeah, that's right. So I thought that was the name of the restaurant. But no, I was in for a surprise. He immediately turned around. He says, Gulabo, हम जिस restaurant में गए थे उसका क्या नाम था? Now that's a part of aging. That's a part of living. But there is the other beautiful part too. Like this gentleman who was sitting at the end of a lake, senior man, Manwa Beparwa, enjoying the breeze at the lake. When he saw a couple of young ladies walk towards the lake, possibly they did not see him sitting there. So they decided that the water was beautiful. There was nobody around. They started undressing to get into the lake for a swim. As they undressed, This gentleman immediately knocked out to make his presence felt and pointed out to a board that was put there, which said, "Swimming is prohibited." So the ladies were quick to ask this senior gentleman, said, "You did not inform us earlier." He says, "No, undressing is not prohibited." Now that's old age. That's the way they could be as seniors from part of intake material. You would say, "Sir, bolna bahut aasan hai. It's very easy to talk all this." But you actually see the problems of aging. You've just turned 60. Let us march into 70s, 80s, and 90s, and you see the problems associated with it. And I think the next 25 minutes I need to devote to talking about that part of the story, which should be inspiration for one of us all. When it is no longer possible, what do? Have you seen an ant moving on the ground? Maybe they are in a flow, all of them. And suddenly they come across a piece of stone, a blockage for them. What do? Do they stop and take an about turn? They don't stop and stay there. They don't take an about turn. They find a way to adapt to that situation and move further, maybe around, maybe over it. So when you find that it is not possible, you need to find alternatives. Adapting is the key. You would say, "I have issues, I have problems." Oh, yes. Who doesn't have problems? Who doesn't have issues? There are only those who are in the cemetery who are said to have no problems. You would have problems. You would have physical ailments, maybe. But then, what is the mental makeup type? If you have problems, accept that these are the limitations, accept that these are going to be part of my aging, and move on. Stop talking about your aches and pains to whoever will listen to you. And mind you, nobody desires to listen. And when you talk, it doesn't provide relief to you and it doesn't evoke empathy either. In fact, the others around are put off, especially the younger ones. For those who are listening to me today and those who are in that age of 70, 80, and 90 would have seen this very often. That when it talks of aches and pains, the younger generation does not want to be around at all. Forget evoking empathy from them. So there is no point talking about your aches and pains to anybody and everybody who's there to listen to you. Live each day as if it is the last. What happens when you talk of living each day as it is the last? Is there a feeling of sadness, or will you live with a feeling of joy that let me celebrate? This is the day I shall celebrate. Make the most of it. When you think of that as the way to look at things, you will celebrate each moment in that day, each moment. Loving unconditionally, no matter what the response is, what the reaction is, what the action is of the others around you, within the family, outside. Unconditional love. And especially when you think that you're living this as the last day of your life, your love is going to be unconditional. नेकी कर और दरिया में डाल ऐसे कहा जाता है. But here too, love unconditionally is the mantra. And dip into nostalgia. Yes, you are 60, you are 70, you are 80, you have seen 80 summers, 70 summers, 60 rains. You have enough memories in the memory bank. That's if you have the memory intact, you shall recall nostalgically. But you need not have to live there. Ultimately, you have to live in the present. You can dip into nostalgia, but live in the present. Find a reason to look forward to each day. As I go to bed, do I have something to look forward to the next day? I very fondly recall when my father would be told in his 80s and 90s that Mr. So-and-so from either Mumbai or Delhi or from wherever was going to come and see him. Say the time given was 4 o'clock in the evening. My father would, right from the earlier day, start preparations as if the gentleman is going to be the next half an hour later. He would run through his entire day, the earlier day and the next day, waiting for that person to be there. He would look forward to. And the entire day would be spent peacefully with himself because he had something to look forward to. Can you find out what is there to look forward to each day? We have Viktor Frankl, who wrote Man's Search for Meaning, who talked of logotherapy, your reason to live. It's not about just meeting somebody at 4 o'clock. It's reason to be there, up there each day. Each day when you go to bed, the next day, there is a reason to get up and get moving. We have the famous book now, Ikigai, where they talk of finding your purpose, looking at your passions and looking at your purpose and aligning them to work on. You will have a reason to get up each day. Life would become wonderful. Or you had Being Mortal by Atul Gawande. If you look at the book where he talks of well-being, and when he defines well-being, he says, a reason to be alive. Why do I need to be alive? If I have a reason to be alive, if I have something to look forward to, if I have a purpose, life is wonderful, whether it is 60, 70, 80, or 90. In fact, you would have noted very many seniors talking of कि बस अब बेटी का ब्याह कर ले फिर हो जाएगा. There is a purpose. That beti ka byah becomes a milestone to be achieved. Until that time, they go on. Have you seen people who have looked at such milestones? And maybe that was the only milestone they had, the only reason they had. And after that, they like gave up on life. Why? Because that was the only one. But can I find out such purposes which are meaningful till the very end? Find new hobbies, learn new things. An Israeli neuroscientist has talked of giving something new to the brain. And the proposal was simple, that if you have lived a life of 70 years, in 70 years you have done things as a matter of routine, your brain is also on an auto mode. And once on an auto mode, the brain is not functioning to its capacity. Unless you give something new. So whether it's a new language, a new musical instrument, a new sport, a new board game, a new hobby, your brain would not have something new to do. And then you would feel the pains of growing old. So look at a new hobby. You could spend time with loved ones and friends and be a part of the community. When in the book Ikigai, they talked of the Japanese, they talked of two concepts. One of Ikigai, where you look for the purpose, and secondly is Moe, which is a close-knit group that they have. The Japanese, especially in Okinawa, have close-knit groups who operate regularly, who meet regularly, who share everything that's happening in their life. That close-knit group allows them to look forward to the meetings, look forward to their discussions, and look forward to support systems within the community, within that close-knit group. So if you can spend time with the loved ones, the community, your friends, then old age is not old age at all. It will really be vintage. Be in nature. So it simply said that you should be in nature. Why? Because nature is the only place where you see the growth everywhere, where you see life everywhere. Even in a garden, when you go to, you see enough life blooming all around you. That's great inspiration for any senior. In fact, it is, for that matter, inspiration for any. But being in nature for seniors is one way to go. Look for role models. And this is a very interesting thing that you can do. Among the seniors, when you check it, role models, maybe the youngsters in the family, when they talk of role models within them in terms of aging, and if you analyze the role models that each one of us has kept amongst the seniors, you will realize that it is not about education, it is not about fame, it is not about success, it is not about the money that you have, it is about the approach to life, it is about the zest for life. You call enthused living. If that is the kind of life you are living, yes, you want to be on each time. In a typical group of friends that I have, we have one person past 65, but fully excited about living. How does it matter? For him, absolutely aging is an ignored thing. It doesn't matter whether you are 60, 65, it doesn't matter. You find people, the other friends, gather around him to draw that inspiration. Yes, each time they would look at what is he doing? What is the new thing that is happening? So such role models are built. If those are the attributes of the role model that you see amongst yourselves, I think those are the attributes that one has to adopt as a senior citizen. Maybe then you will call yourself vintage, zest for life. And one more important thing is for a senior citizen is decluttering. Now, minimalism, decluttering are such oft used phrases, but I know what decluttering in terms of aging would mean. My father, who I said lived up to 94, I lost him a couple of years ago. My mother, who lived up to 97, whom I lost again a couple of years ago. Both of them virtually Sansar ka sara sarmaya was just in one small cabin bag that you would use in a flight anywhere. One cabin bag. That was the kind of clutter they had for themselves in life. And because that was the kind of life they were living, they had nothing to lose at any point of time, ready to go at any point of time, ready to move out any point of time, not much to worry about every point of time. Simple mantra, declutter. You need less and less. And as you actually look into your day-to-day living, you realize that not much is required. Not much is required. You can do with the least. And it's not about things. It's also about the kind of experiences that you need to have. It's kind of about movement that you want to have. They say, ठीक है, घूम लिए अभी, बहुत घूमने का इरादा नहीं है. Fine, they are fine with it. So decluttering is not about only the physical things that you have around you, but in fact the mental makeup, the thoughts. There is a declutter even in the mind. Very little to think about. Now these are some of the mantras that they say that a senior citizen should look at. The list could be endless, but I shall stop at that in terms of the mantras. So what do we do? Love your age. You are old enough to be better. You are young enough not to care. You are experienced enough to do it right, isn't it? At age 60 and 70, you have made enough mistakes in your earlier days to know that this wouldn't be right and this would be right. You are young enough not to care. I wear my socks, I don't wear my socks. Doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. The shirt is completely ironed, absolutely for the occasion or not. Doesn't really matter. Doesn't mean that you will not be attired well, but it really doesn't matter. So, young enough not to care for what the world would say. Old enough to be better always. That yes, I have the wisdom and maturity of the experience over the years. I shall do better. So, love your age. Stop lying about your age. कोई झूठ बोलने की जरूरत नहीं है. कोई बुरा मानने की जरूरत नहीं. कोई कह दे you are 60, you are 65, you are 70, you are on the wrong side. Doesn't matter. Brag about it. Even at age 60, this is it. At age 70, this is it. I have a gentleman friend of mine who is 70 plus, who has amongst his group everyone who's 10 years or 15 years younger to him. Now that's a wonderful way of living. That you live with people, because at age 70, at age 80, you will ultimately find that those of your peers, those of your contemporaries, you are losing one after the other. Isn't it a good idea at such time to find out company of friends who are much younger? They are going to be definitely seeing until you breathe your last. They will be definitely better company, good company for you. So this gentleman who's 70 plus goes for yoga even today, looks at new ways of doing things, appreciates the smallest beauties around, finds out what next best can be done, and therefore I feel each day he has something to look forward to. Therefore, even with 70 plus years of age, he doesn't seem to be growing old at all. In fact, in the pandemic, he went through a bout of corona, was in hospital for 7 days. But you see him today, you will not realize that it has made any difference to him. Why? Because doesn't age doesn't matter. That's a number. That's just a number. So he doesn't really mind somebody telling him that, oh, budha ho gaye, ab ki umar ho gayi, ab bhulne lage hai. It doesn't matter to him. He brags about his age and the things he can do at even at that age. Or could you keep humming another of the Sahir Ludhianvi lyrics from Hum Dono, sung by Muhammad Rafi and picturized on Devanand? Now, when I talk of Devanand, here is another role model, another iconic figure whom all of us know, especially in India, uh, who was vintage. He didn't grow old. You look at his interview with Simi Garewal at that age, and you realize the zest for living that he had. And I think, therefore, that song from Hum Dono, sung by Mohammad Rafi, and of course, the lyrics are penned by none other than Sahir Ludhianvi, where he says, मैं जिंदगी का साथ निभाता चला गया, हर फिक्र को धुएं में उड़ाता चला गया. Wonderful lines from that song, and the entire song, of course. If you think you can hum those lines all through when you are living, you are Devanand, no less. Old are you? No, you are vintage. That is what you need to understand. And because, as they say, life should not be a journey to the grave with the intention of arriving safely in an attractive and well preserved body, but rather to skid in sideways, chocolate in one hand and an ice cream cone in another, body thoroughly used up, totally worn out, and screaming, "Woo, what a ride!" If that is the way you can approach living at the age 60, 70, 80s, and 90s, I am sure you would be saying that it is vintage and not growing old. The pangs of growing old, I recall a very wonderful story of a senior citizen husband who went to his doc one day, a hearing specialist, and he says, "Look, I have a problem. My wife is hard on hearing." So the doc said, "Where is she?" He said, "No, I can't get her because I can't tell her that she can't hear properly. She wouldn't like it at her age." So he says, "That's amazing. You don't have the patient with you. Whom do I examine? How do I tell you what is the treatment that can be given?" He says, "Doc, understand my problem. I can't get her. You need to tell me, you need to give me some medication, some treatment which I can administer so that she can hear properly." Now, she was, of course, a senior lady like him. The doctors, understanding the dilemma which the husband had, the senior gentleman, said, "Okay, at least do me a favor. I need to know how hard she is on hearing." So I said, "How do I know that?" The senior gentleman asked. So the doctor said, "Okay, do one thing. When you get into your parking from a distance for 50, 100 meters, maybe, you call out her name, check up whether she has heard you. If not, try going closer, closer, and closer till you reach her almost and call out. And you would know at till what distance she can hear you." So this, the husband said, is good. It can possibly be done. So he moved out. He went home. As he parked his car, he yelled out, "Shakuntala, aaj khane mein kya banaya?" Shakuntala is the wife's name. So he didn't get any response, obviously. So he went close to the main entrance and says, "Shakuntala, aaj khane mein kya banaya?" He could distinctly see Shakuntala in the kitchen. But then there was no response from Shakuntala. So he realized that yahan se bhi sunai nahi deta. So he went closer near the kitchen door and says, "Shakuntala, aaj khane mein kya banaya?" Nothing. So he said, wow, itna bhi sunai nahi deta hai. So he went just behind her, tapped her on her shoulders, and says, Shakuntala, aaj khane mein kya bana hai? Shakuntala turned around and said, 4 बार तो कह चुकी हूं कि पुलाव बनाया है, आपको सुनाई नहीं देता? That's the beauty of aging. That you think सामने वाला सुनता नहीं है, सामने वाले को पता है कि आपको सुनाई कम देता है, and you still continue to live those golden years. I wish you all the best in your journey into this golden era, where every time you meet a person who says you're old, you can tell him, no, old? No, not at all. I am vintage. Thank you.
Thank you so much for engaging our listeners in this insightful class. I want to thank Dr. Jain for being our guest here at BILF. Our next discussion, From Cheering to Chairing, Journey of Female Protagonists, will begin in 15 minutes. Join us for the same at 12:45 p.m.